Thank you for tuning in to the latest edition of the 12 Kyle podcast. Whether you're listening during your commute, while working out, or just relaxing at home, we appreciate you. Every download, every listen, and every subscription means a lot. Up next, the 12 Kyle podcast.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for listening. Thank you for downloading. And thank you for subscribing to the latest edition of the 12 Kyle podcast. I am your boy, 12 Kyle. Man, check this out. On this episode, what I'd like to ask you is a simple question. How has your listening to music changed over the years? Or has it? I came to that question because I recently did an episode with the homie J Boog. Shout out to J Boog, the J Spot Network. She had me on, and we did an episode. It was called Memories Through Music, where she asked me a bunch of questions about, my memories of music. Very thought-provoking, very insightful episode. In fact, she's got a series going on now, so definitely check out J Boog at the J Spot Network. Again, dope episode, if I do say so myself. But one of the questions she asked me was about, my musical memories. And I kind of got off into a small tangent about, how my music, as far as how I consume music, has changed over the years. And I gave the analogy, and I'll give it again because it's worth repeating. My listening to music has changed over the years because I've changed and I've grown and matured. And the point that I tried to make was given the fact that when I was younger, right, the best thing you could do was ever to take me to McDonald's, because going to McDonald's to eat was a treat. It was something that you didn't do every day. And when you did it, it was something major. As crazy as it may sound. But I just really and thoroughly enjoyed going to McDonald's to eat McDonald's food, right? So after that, by the time I was in high school, McDonald's was, it was huge. It was the thing. I could actually get in a car and drive myself. And then by the time I got to college, it kind of changed a little bit. Now, I love to go eat at Applebee's, right? And that would be a perfect place. Getting tongue tied. Sorry. That would be a perfect place to take a date. And, it's cool because Applebee's is your neighborhood Applebee's, right? The food it doesn't blow you away, but it's not that expensive, but it's good, especially for a college kid, right? And so you think that Applebee's is dope and it can't get any better. And then as I, got older and started eating a little bit better and I got a couple of more dollars in my pocket, then I started going places like my favorite restaurant, the Ocean Air. And I love Ocean Air, right? And so, and it's funny because as much as I love Ocean Air, I almost always get the same thing every time I go. But my taste buds have changed. And it's not to say that I'm above eating McDonald's, even though I haven't had a burger from McDonald's in 20 years. I'll still eat the fries, but that's about it. There's nothing else that McDonald's can offer me. But, the idea of me going to McDonald's or Applebee's at this point, probably not going to happen. And I will go to Applebee's for, I don't know, a salad or something like that. But, it's not my go-to. I'll just put it like that. So that's kind of how music has changed as far as how I consume it. It was once something very simple, and then it got to be something that was really, really cool and really, really dope. And now my music taste is very refined. So it's certain things I just can't consume. And there's a couple of reasons for that. So I know you're probably thinking, well, why did it change? I'm glad you asked. I'll tell you. It changed for several reasons. One of which is that my investment in the music changed. I was no longer buying CDs every week. Uh, Shout out to uh, Kaza, LimeWire, Napster, which there is an episode coming about those services, and we did. We also did an episode probably about a year or so ago. Me and B Cox. Shout out to B Cox for coming through and blessing the podcast. We talked about how we consumed music back then, but there was a personal investment back then, particularly like in the 90s. Excuse me, in the 90s to consume music. And what I mean by a personal investment was, first of all, I was literally buying CDs every week, right? Broke college kid, right? I'm at South Carolina State University, my alma mater, and I'm buying music every week because that was the thing to do. And I didn't have a lot of money, but the little bit of money I did have, I was spending on CDs. And so you literally had to leave the dorm. I had to get in my car, drive to the Prince of Orange Mall in Orangeburg, South Carolina, leave the campus of South Carolina State University, go grab it, go pay for a CD, open it up, put it in the CD changer or what have you in the car, and give it a listen. So there was a personal investment. Like you literally, I couldn't just grab a cell phone and just start listening to music. It wasn't that simple. And because there was a personal investment, you really expected a lot from the music that you were going to listen to. Because again, you were paying for it. Now, full disclosure, like I have Spotify, and I think my kids have Apple Music. But like, so we pay for streaming services. So, or I pay, I should say. I pay for streaming services, but it's not the same as, going to the CD changer or the CD stand in your room and pulling out CDs. I missed that time. I don't have that personal investment anymore. And sites like Napster, and, Kaza and LimeWire, they changed the game. They changed everything for me. So, it was just something where your personal investment really made a difference. And so, when music became free, all bets were off after that. So I didn't have the same feeling, if you will. And things really just changed for me because, again, the music wasn't free. It was now free as opposed to me paying $10 for it. So even in the sense of the music becoming free, because we were getting it from, illegally, if you will, from these sites, what I used to call secondary marketing, it made a difference. And even if the music, let's say I go to download the latest, I don't know, Tone Loc album. Let me not use Tone Loc. Let's just say I go to download the latest Big Daddy Kane album. If I log into Kaza and I download it off somebody else's computer to my computer, and it takes a long time for that to happen. But once, I set my thing and I go to sleep and wake up the next morning, I got the new Big Daddy Kane album. And let's say it's just mid. Let's say it's not that good. Well, I haven't invested anything into that album. I mean, simply put, no harm, no foul. The only thing that happened was it just took me time to download it. But if the album's not good, it's no big deal to me. And wherein in years past, if I had paid for the Big Daddy Kane CD, and let's just say it was whack, oh, I'm mad as hell because now I'm pissed off. I've wasted $10, right? And I can't afford to waste $10. I'm not going to waste my money on music. So that was one of the ways that it changed, because my listening changed because of my personal investment or lack thereof into the music. Another way that it changed was the quality of music kind of declined. Well, actually I can't say kind of. It declined. I think the music, particularly rap music and R&B music, it really became oversaturated. The market really just became oversaturated. And I'll use an artist like Lil Wayne. Lil Wayne, it's so interesting to hear people talk about Lil Wayne because Lil Wayne's mixtape run was incredible. There may not be another hip hop artist that had the kind of run that Lil Wayne had as a mixtape when he was putting out hundreds of mixtapes. Not hundreds, but you get my point. But the flip side of it is that the music was so readily available that it kind of washed everything out because like you were constantly getting music. So in a lot of ways, people couldn't keep up because Lil Wayne would drop a mixtape, then 50 Cent would drop a mixtape, and then Jay-Z might drop a mixtape, and then Nas might drop a mixtape. And so like it became an avalanche. And, you know, simply put, an artist like Wayne, when you produce music like that at a rapid pace, you really don't give the audience a chance to miss you. And I think that's key because if you think back to before the internet, you know, your favorite artist might put out an album in, let's say, 1995, right? They put out the album. Maybe they go on a tour for a year or two. They tour the United States, then they tour the world. If it's successful, maybe they jump on a remix or something like that. But you probably won't get another album from them for another 2 or 3 years. So, you know, our favorite artists were producing albums. Some were coming, you know, year after year, like Jay-Z, but he was recording on an epic pace. But for the most part, your favorite artists, you probably would hear from them in about 2 or 3 years, every 2 or 3 years. And what was interesting was that you consumed the music so much, and so it was so important to you that you really cherished and relished the music that you got. So you didn't get the newest Lil Wayne mixtape and say, "Oh man, I can't believe what he's about to do next." What do you mean? You got the tape in your hand. Why are you worried about what's next? So it really just changed. So yeah, I think the quality of music declined, and it forced us to really just kind of take what was given to us. And if you have an artist that is constantly giving you music, then it does water down the product to some degree. And even for me now, when somebody comes out, unless it's somebody that I really, really, really want to hear, there's no sense of urgency for me to listen to it because guess what? The music isn't going anywhere. It's always going to be here, right? So to me, you don't really get the music that actually what we call stick to your ribs. The music doesn't stick to my ribs anymore. And, you know, it's unfortunate. So at this point, you know, those are just a couple of reasons why I think the music, or at least how my listing has changed over the years. I tell you what, it's time for a quick commercial break. So we'll take a break, and on the other side, we'll come back and I'll tell you a few more reasons why I think the music has changed. Sit tight. We'll be back in just a second. Are you feeling nostalgic for the golden eras of rap and soul music? If so, tune in to the Rap Soul Podcast. We are your weekly journey through the 80s, 90s, and 2000s, spotlighting the music and the hidden gems that shaped the soundtrack of our lives. From the powerful beats to the soulful melodies, we bring you the best of the past with fresh insights and stories. Rediscover the music that defined a generation. Subscribe to the Rap Soul Podcast and enjoy the vibes. And just like that, we are back. Thanks again for checking out this edition of the 12 Kyle Podcast. I am your boy, 12 Kyle. As I mentioned before we went to the break, I wanted to give you a couple of more reasons as to why I think my listening has changed over the years, and maybe yours has too. But I definitely want to hear from you as to whether or not your listening has changed as far as how you consume music. number 3 point that I'd like to make is I personally think that the record labels stopped caring about the music. It really became a point of, okay, we've got this music out here, right? And we need to figure out how we're going to profit off of it. Because the thing about it was when you had these illegal sites like Kazaa and LimeWire and Napster, what happened was they stopped making music. Record labels stopped making music because now all of the music is being pushed in a different direction and fans are getting it for free in essence. And they're no longer going to Best Buy or Radio Shack, excuse me. Going to a record store and purchasing music. They were, going like what I was doing, going to Best Buy, buying a bunch of blank CDs so that when I download the new Big Daddy Kane or the new Nas album or the new Mary J. Blige album, I can download it to my computer, burn it to a CD in my hard drive, and now I have the physical copy of a CD that I only paid, what, $10 for 10 CDs, 10 blank CDs. I mean, it's a killer. It was a game changer. So I think record labels and the fans for that matter too, I can't put it all on the record labels. I think they both stopped caring. And like I said, when you give fans but so much, they have an overabundance of stuff here. And they have no reason to care about it as much as you would like them to. And I think that was part of the downfall. And then it got to a point where with music, as far as how I was consuming it and my listening pleasure or displeasure, with the artists, especially as the internet advanced and social media became a thing, it really became, for some of these artists, it became about everything but the music. Like, you could get on Twitter and see what your favorite artist was eating or drinking for breakfast. And you could see them turning up in the club. You could see them promoting all kinds of brands. And they gave you everything but the music. Like, I marvel at the great Cardi B. Cardi B has done a lot. She's jumped on a lot of songs and rapped her little self away. But if I'm not mistaken, Cardi B's only made one album. Am I correct? I mean, y'all could correct. I'm not a Cardi B fan. I don't dislike her, but I don't listen to her music. But if I'm not mistaken, she's only made, at the time of this recording, she's only made one studio album, and she's been out for a few years now. And I mean, so for somebody like her, it's about everything but the music. And the fans honestly have said that they're okay with that. For me, it kind of cheapens things because now it's not about the music. And in my opinion, it should have always been about the music. It's about, even for new artists, you pitch yourself to a record label or to a marketing company or whomever is going to promote your stuff. And, they'll tell you, well, hey, how many social media followers do you have? What's your social media presence? How many followers do you have on TikTok, on Instagram? That type of stuff. And it's about everything but the music. And so, and then it got to a point where a lot of artists, I'll be honest, just made a lot of bad music. And here's the thing, as fans, we were okay with it. And therein lies the problem. Because if we're never okay with our favorite artists making bad music, then there's a problem. They have to step their game up. Because see, again, and I don't want to compare everything to the 80s and the 90s and the 70s, but the difference was, if you did not produce a good album, you could and would get dropped from your label. Just that simple. And what I mean by drop from your label is fired, for those of you kids who don't understand at home. So you really only had maybe 1, 2 shots to make it happen. And not everybody was going to have chart topping albums and record sales. Of course, that wasn't going to happen for everybody, but you had to give your label a reason to, continuously financially back you. And I tell the story all the time about, you know, if you look at a group like the Fugees, who supremely talented, they had an album that came out before The Score, which was their diamond selling album, sold 10 million copies, whatever. But that first album, Blunted on Reality, that album almost got them dropped from the label because it sold like double uranium. So it happens. And so I think we have to be mindful of the fact that, as fans, we control a lot of that. But I think we've gotten to a point, at least for me, fans got to a point where they really didn't care about the music. They would much rather worry about seeing you on Instagram or seeing you in person or seeing you in concert. Not really concerned about you making new music. And so we either accepted it or we championed it. And I think both ways really kind of damaged, the working relationship between the fans and the artists. And then the also working relationship between the artist and the record labels. Music, I guess the next thing I want to talk about is as far as how my music has changed or how I've listened to music, how it's changed over the years. To me, music just sounded better in a different era than the era that I'm currently in right now. Does that sound snobbish? It depends on who you ask. I like things a certain way. I like it to sound a certain way. I like music to feel a certain way. If you think that's snobbish, I'm cool. You can call me a music snob. I just might be one. I don't know. But I remember when music was a jam. Like, you felt good when you heard it. Particularly with hip hop and R&B, there was substance. It made you feel good. It might make you cry. It might make you laugh. It might make you want to fight. It might make you want to do all of the above, but it evoked an emotion. I don't necessarily know that happens a lot now. Or maybe it does, but it probably doesn't happen as much as it once did. And for fans like me, that's not cool. Or we just kind of, step away from it. But I mean, music could make you want to run through a wall, right? Or it could make you fall in love. But it should evoke some type of emotion. At least the great music does, in my opinion. But I mean, like, we all take something from the music. And so I've been asked that question before. Are you a music snob? If you call me a snob, again, I'm not offended. I like what I like. And what I've liked has gotten me this far. And that doesn't mean that I won't listen to music of today, because I do. It's just a lot of it I just can't consume. Or I grow very tired of it very quick. And I mean, when I spoke earlier about music kind of sticking to your ribs, when's the last time you heard an album that like just hit you and you had to stay on that album? Like, you didn't want to hear anything else. I mean, we talk about it all the time. Like, an album will come out and it'll come out on a Friday. And if you're on social media, your whole timeline is talking about it all day long on Friday. And for some, they're lucky if they're still talking about it the following Tuesday. And for others, they're lucky if they're talking about it the following Friday. Well, guess what? 2 more Fridays away. So the album's been out 3 weeks. Nobody's talking about it. You know why? Because some other new album has come out. The music don't stick to your ribs anymore. At least that's the way it appears. there's music and there's songs that I go back to that, from this current era. And I really and truly thoroughly enjoy. But I find myself a lot of times just slowly gravitating back to the music that I love. And that's the music from, those eras, the 80s, the 90s, the early 2000s. And again, it's not to say that I won't listen to something that came out last week, because I have, and I do. A lot of it, not all of it, but a lot of it doesn't stick to me. And from what I can tell, a lot of it doesn't stick to you either. And that's cool. That is totally fine. But yeah, I've been asked a question about being a music snob, and trust me, it's not a question that offends me at all. I could venture to say that I probably am. And I'm perfectly fine with that. Perfectly fine with that. But ultimately, I think, it's something that we have to figure out for ourselves. And so it brings me back to the original question that I posed at the beginning of this episode. How has your music listening changed over the years, or has it changed? For me, it clearly has, and I'm okay with it. I've settled upon the fact that, nobody's making Ribbon in the Sky anymore. like Stevie Wonder. Nobody's making Stay from like Jodeci. Nobody's rapping like Biggie. Nobody's bringing you the charisma of Nipsey Hussle anymore. Everybody's different, and that's okay. And that's what it should be. There are no more Tupacs. He was a one of one. He truly was a one of one. There are no more Ice Cubes. But they're different versions. And I think what makes it interesting is that now the modern versions of those entertainers, you have to find them, wherein we used to be in a time where they were really pushed up and promoted. What's promoted now? Something totally different. But that's another story for a whole nother day. But again, I want to close out the episode by thanking Jay Boog again for having me on. Please go check out that episode. I thought it was really, really dope. I didn't know any of the questions that she was going to ask me, so it felt good to kind of come off the top. And Jay's a great host and a great interviewer, so check her out as well. But ladies and gentlemen, that's going to do it for me. Thank you for checking out this edition of the 12 Kyle podcast. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast if you haven't done so already. You can find this podcast anywhere. Wherever you get your podcast, that's where you can find us. Be sure to subscribe on YouTube. You can find audio and video. Just go to YouTube, and that's the great thing about that. And then also hit the, notification button. That way you can get notified when the episodes drop. Of course, the audio. You can find this podcast on all streaming platforms. Wherever you get your podcast, that's where you can find us. If you want to follow me on socials, hit me up at 12Kyle, at 12Kyle Podcast. And also, we do have merch. So if you would like to contribute to the podcast financially, get yourself some merch right here. If you're looking on YouTube, we have the 12 Kyle Podcast coffee mugs. We've got hoodies, t-shirts, you name it, for the low price. We got it. And if you want to hit us up on Cash App, $TWELVEKYLE. And before I go, let me remind you, I have a new baby. Not literally, but I have a new baby. It's called the Rap Soul Podcast. It is a brand new podcast that I just started. Do yourself a favor. Do me a favor. Go over there, subscribe. You can find it wherever, just the same way you find the 12 Kyle Podcast, YouTube as well. The Rap Soul Podcast. I call it the intersection of rap music, soul music, hip hop music, R&B music from the 80s, 90s, 2000s. We got album reviews. We got artist features. We got just great conversations over there. It just started. So do me a favor. Do yourself a favor. Subscribe. And that's going to do it for me. I am your boy 12 Kyle. I'll catch you guys next time. 5. G's. Yeah.
Thanks again for listening to this episode of the 12 Kyle podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure that you hit the subscribe button and share this podcast with a friend who needs the 12 Kyle podcast in their life. Every listen, every download, and every share helps us grow. Thanks for being a part of the 12 Kyle podcast community. We appreciate your support. We will catch you next time. 5,000.